Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Portillo. I will be your moderator for today's webinar, where we will be discussing using social and behavior change to expand access, build trust, and meet the family planning needs of youth. Slide, please. Thank you. So I will start my camera so you can see me. Good morning. My name is Erin Portillo, as I mentioned. I'm a senior program officer working on the Breakthrough Action Project, which is USAID's flagship social and behavior change project. I also work a lot on the West Africa Breakthrough Action Project. I'm based with the Johns Hopkins Center for Communication program, and also I'd like to take a few moments to introduce you to our speakers whose voices you'll also be hearing today. Very first, Catherine Harbour, who will speak about findings from a recent and ongoing review of youth-focused digital reproductive health and family planning interventions. We'll also hear from Léopoldine Tossou, a young professional working with the Merci Mon Héros campaign, who will talk about using a discussion-based tool called Empathways to strengthen empathy for youth among family planning providers and among community members in Côte d'Ivoire. We'll also hear from Thon Okanlawan, the reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health lead with Breakthrough Action Liberia, where the team is using existing Let's Talk About Sex, reproductive health focused radio show episodes to host in-person discussions about reproductive health and family planning. Each of these presentations will explore the challenges that we face in youth social and behavior change programming regarding expanding access to family planning and reproductive health information and services, and the role that trust plays in this question of access. We'll also talk about how Breakthrough Action programs have tackled these challenges and what we have learned from these outcomes. A few logistical details: the Empathways session will remain in the main room so that we can continue to use the interpretation function. And we'll also be sharing recordings of today's roundtable, including all 3 breakout room sessions. And additionally, we will be providing a webinar recap document, both in English and in French, so you don't miss the highlights from today's roundtable, and to share with those afterwards who perhaps were not able to join us. Slide, please. As an overview of what you can expect today, following these opening remarks, we'll move into our breakout sessions of those presentations I've just described, and also noted in blue on your screen, for about 30 minutes. You should have selected your preferred breakout sessions at registration, and we will do our best to honor those choices. Following each presentation, there will also be some time for discussion before we return to the main session for report out. Finally, we'll conclude with closing remarks from Amy Uccello, the Senior Youth and Reproductive Health Technical Advisor with USAID. Once again, a reminder to please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Thank you so much, to allow all participants to hear the presenters and the remarks being made. Once again, welcome to all of our participants and also to each of our presenters today. And please give us a few moments while we assign you to breakout rooms. A window should pop up on your screen momentarily to direct you. Thank you.
So my name is Catherine Harbour. I'm a senior program officer at Johns Hopkins Center for Communication Programs, working on the Breakthrough Action Project in a couple of places. I've been working with Erin and also Kelsey Crow on the on this review, and I'm going to start the slides if that's okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So again, welcome. We'll have about 10 minutes for this presentation and then about 30 minutes for discussion. So the challenge that this review is trying to address is the balance between leveraging the potential of digital spaces and ensuring that young people have the skills necessary to selectively engage with the content they encounter and also the access to that content. Our 3 research questions are here. How do young people use mobile and digital technologies to address family planning and reproductive health information, to access that information? What types of content resonate best with youth? And then how do they decide what information that they find online is correct and reliable? Our methodology, we have 3 data sources. First is a review of documents, literature, peer-reviewed literature, and gray literature. We've collected over 60 and retained about 30 of those. Key informant interviews. We've conducted 22 interviews, pretty much equally divided among implementers, researchers, and funders. And then soon we'll be launching a survey of youth in low and middle income countries. So those are our 3 data sources. And I'm going to present some of the findings and then our recommendations thus far. The findings I've selected to present are those that are focused on the themes for today's event: expanding access and building trust. So first, we found that digital can be an effective addition to reach segments of young people, but it's not always the best. It's not a magic bullet. And that's will come up in the recommendations about when to choose digital. Second, the context, the demographics, and the infrastructure that a youth lives in affect their access to online content. Many of the interventions that we learned about focus on providing reproductive health and family planning information to young women. There seem to be fewer options for other genders, other sex, or for boys. Next, the online platforms, youth value online platforms for anonymity, for confidentiality, and also that they can access it without the bias that they may encounter if they talking with a service provider or in real life person. Online content is queen. More on this in recommendations. And finally, this field is very dynamic. It's growing geographically. Platforms come online. There are more methods coming for marketing, for monitoring and evaluation. Okay. So next is our recommendations. So I'll focus on 2 of these, but just to talk a little bit about all 5. First is to start with the best practices for social and behavior change, and also for working with youth. So some of these best practices involving youth throughout the project, also starting with knowing the intended audience, starting with a landscape analysis, needs assessment, asset mapping. Third is defining clearly the goal of the program. Maybe the goal relates to development priorities related to the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. Maybe the goals of the program are to build demand for services at providers. Maybe the goal is just to share information about reproductive health and family planning. Maybe the goal is to create a community, to offer opportunities for self-expression for youth, or to strengthen capacity of youth. So the goals will help to inform the complementary monitoring and evaluation framework. And finally, it's important to identify segments within an audience. The audiences typically can be kind of big, and so defining segments and really designing to those segments is a helpful approach. Second recommendation is to convene the right team, to make sure that you've got the right skill sets within the team of people working on the program. So youth, the end users, also, and they may appreciate opportunities for capacity building. Also expertise in the legal environment in the country or the area within which the program is intended to operate, information technology, expertise in family planning and reproductive health, expertise in social and gender norms, content moderation, expertise in content moderation, social marketing and search engine optimization, and finally graphic design. Those are some of the skill sets that are useful to have on a team. Also linking with making partnerships, for example, with government, with private sector, with service providers. That's a helpful aspect of many programs. And I'll talk a bit more about how content is queen, and also about the expanding the offerings. A final point about monitoring and evaluation. Many programs can be built, but it's important to assess if people actually use them, if the intended audiences use them. So they're built, but did the intended audiences come to the site that was built? And this it requires attention to marketing, search engine optimization, monitoring engagement, both organic engagement and sponsored engagement. And some of the metrics that can be used, like time spent on a page, repeat use, that's an important one. Monitoring and evaluation can also link to services and to see if youth are engaging with the content and then seeking services. And it's important to plan for adaptive management to know what's happening on the site and to be able to react in real time or quickly to optimize the use of the site. Okay, so final points, or a few more points about content. It's important that the content is trustworthy, and to make it trustworthy, it should be correct. It's helpful that it's in the audience's own words. Branding it with a trusted organization, which may or may not be a government body, that can be helpful depending on the context. It's important, and a real plus of the digital offerings is that it can be responsive, so it can be more interactive than broadcast forms like TV or radio, and that's a real advantage to a digital platform. So the repeat engagement is a good metric of trust. So one of the implementers we talked to told us that their intended audience comes to the site daily. 45% of their users come daily. So that seems like a real demonstration that the users trust the content and trust the website or the app. Some other points, and this is probably similar to what you've seen in other SBC for youth recommendations, that it's not scary. It might use humor rather than horror. One of the implementers we talked to referenced making something that's got the tone of a mascara commercial, which seemed appropriate. Using a holistic approach to relationships. It's not just about HIV prevention, rather it's about relationships and a more holistic approach. Livelihoods, also things that are relevant to youth in general, is a way to bring people to the platform and keep them coming back. The competition for the user's attention is fierce, and it's important to remember that as a designer, you're competing for attention with every series, every meme that you've ever seen and shared with a friend, as well as you're competing with erotic content. Okay, a couple more points on content. Some of the experts we spoke with and the documents we've reviewed refer to using role models. So like a nurse or an auntie, a doctor, a friendly doctor, a young woman, and also storytelling platforms have been helpful. It's important to be aligned with the audience's values, priorities, and experiences, and to offer viable actions. And user-generated content has been used in several of the sites, several of the interventions we spoke with. And moderation strategy is very important here. Coming back to who's on the team, this is part of the recommendation about using user-generated content and moderation to make sure that chatbots are responding appropriately. If someone perhaps discloses something in a chat situation, that they are not given an inappropriate answer. Safeguarding also if someone is sharing information that needs to be acted upon to protect safety. It's important that the moderation strategy is able to respond to that. Okay, a final recommendation is to expand the content offerings with respect to sex and gender. More boys than girls worldwide own smartphones, and there's few platforms intended for their use. So this our reviews pointed this as a potential gap or lost opportunity, and also highlights the need for mixed channels, so both offline and online content to reach the priority audiences. Okay, so finally, and influencers also might be helpful. They can take content where their users take them, and that can be helpful as well to work with influencers. Okay, finally, so some discussion questions here. Any points of clarification before we start the discussion? Okay.
And I was wondering if you could just speak a bit more about the organic versus sponsored engagement.
Sure. So some of the experts we spoke with and websites or apps that we looked at, digital content that we came to understand a bit more, were working with what users brought to them or what the intended audience brought to them in terms of topics or questions they were interested in. For example, one of the Love Matters groups in Egypt, they have a different topic every week for the year. So they decide 52 topics and then have users bring in their own interests and questions related to those topics. But the platform is responsive to what the users are curious about, asking about. How's that?
Great, thanks. It's Clara.
Okay. So I'll just ask if anyone has any general impressions, any feedback on these 5 recommendations, and I'll put them back up on screen. And then our other 2 discussion questions: what opportunities exist to build trust between adolescents and adults in the digital space? And what are educators, health workers, and digital content creators doing to ensure that adolescents and youth are accessing quality information? Okay. Okay. So let's see, I think we have 15 participants, so not too many that we couldn't just speak out. If you're more comfortable, I can look for raised hands.
Hi, this is Nishit from Mumbai.
Hello.
The question that comes to my mind is app versus content on regular social media. App requires somebody to adopt the app, download an app, and install it. Regular social media tends to work slowly at its own pace, and it's very difficult to pace it up, unless you invest heavily in promoting it. When you do that, then it becomes more advertising online. So that's a question I have. I do not know the answer. I'm hoping to get one here.
Thank you. I can respond a bit, but perhaps someone else in the group would like to start with the response. From our research, one thing that came across clearly is the depending on the intended audience's access and availability of data and device to access content with, many people recommended working on developing something that can fit within a regular social media platform that the youth would already be going on to. Not trying to develop a new app and then trying to attract people to that app. Would you like to describe a bit more what the situation is you're encountering where you are?
A few years ago, we wanted to create a viral on social network about sexual abuse. And we studied it a lot, did some research, and no matter what content we did, we couldn't take away the preachy, element about it. Then we made a film. The film is called Komal. A film about, an animated film, a 6-minute film. And that film, the moment it went on YouTube, it just acquired a life of its own. We got calls from some 30 countries, including the UNCHR, who wanted to dub it in their local language and use it. It became a kind of iconic landmark film on child sexual abuse. It has more than 30 or 40 million views on YouTube. And we kept thinking, what is it that made it? In India, some school reported on sexual abuse. Parents immediately went to this site and made it a viral on WhatsApp. So sometimes we felt that, what becomes popular in terms of what becomes viral is something very difficult to define. No matter how much we researched it, it's very difficult to define. Maybe it's topicality, maybe it is the non-preachiness, that comes with it. Maybe it is the boldness with the concept. So it's sometimes difficult to define it, particularly in family planning issues in India. Here we have such a wide range of target audiences. You have the rural population, where generally the male wage earner will have a smartphone. Nobody else. Everybody else will have the regular old phone. Then you have urban audiences where, because of the pandemic, all the children are online and they all have access to smartphones. So you have this extreme ranges of youth experiences within the same market. 100 kilometers to the north of the city, you have a totally different audience experience. So it becomes very difficult to build something that is more homogeneous across, let's say, a few districts or a state.
Terrific, thank you. I hope you've been able to see in the chat, congratulations and some appreciation for the success that you've achieved with getting views and the attention to Kamal. It sounds like a really groundbreaking piece of work. So thank you for sharing that experience. Would others like to chime in about this? Amy has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I got to imagine that trying to chase after what might become viral is going to be an impossible task, and that continuously tweaking what kind of digital content that you have so that it does become more popular is a better approach, but recognizing that there's a constant need to adapt. What's viral today is certainly not viral. What's viral this morning is not viral by this afternoon or by the next day. Sometimes, there's passing whims of what's important. And so true commitment to a single site does happen, as Catherine was saying about Love Matters, but then is not as popular across the board. So I would think resources are one of your first questions as to, can I make something that I can continuously adapt with young voices a part of that adaptation? And what platform would best meet that need? Because the work that we're doing here at USAID on an app illustrates a very highly intensive, resource-intensive approach. And that might not be as feasible. So perhaps social media that is constantly changing, constantly adapting, listening to young people about what they want, and recognizing that you might have a ton of clicks today and next to none tomorrow, because as they said, the competition out there is fierce. But yeah, I would say let's pay attention to what you can afford, knowing that adaptation is probably what's most needed.
Okay.
Amy, I agree to much of what you're saying. What I would really like to understand is that, when you look at media like television or radio, there is a definition of what is the noise level there. So you can actually quantify, what level of noise you need to make and how different you need to be in order to stand out. Unfortunately, in social media, that kind of a quantification is almost impossible. The level of noise changes based on the time of the day and the day of the week, as well as the topicality of it. So it's very difficult to quantify. So it's like putting a effort every single day and updating it every day, which is an enormous amount of resource.
Thank you very much. Joanna's written some comments in the chat.
Yeah.
Joanna, would you like to just say what you've written there, so that if people are calling in on their phone, they can?
Sure, yeah, I was just sort of agreeing with Amy about sort of the resources, and thinking that it's an ongoing thing, not just about the maintenance, but as others have said, it's about kind of creating the return visits, keeping the content fresh and interesting. But I think we've also found that from some of our social media campaigns as well on existing platforms where we're trying to reach young people where they are already, but it still requires intensive support as well. And I think sort of more than we expected in some ways, in terms of how much is still needed in terms of the resources to keep it going, to keep it fresh.
Great, thank you.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. May I?
Yes, Sanjay, go ahead.
The thing is that your presentation was very nice, and the concept of utilizing social media and digital communication for family planning, creating awareness is very interesting. But unfortunately, my experience with the health workers in India is that most of the time they are not indulged in the creation of any social media messages. Rather than they are just a forwarding agent. Whatever they receive from the different resources, they are just forwarding it. Most of the time, they are not, means either you motivate them and they forward, or they have knowledge about it, but creation of message is very difficult for these health workers, especially at grassroots level. We have tried. I'm in a health education. We are teaching diploma health education to the student, and we make them to create certain kind of messages. But most of the time, I have seen that they are not preparing, rather than they are trying to copying from the different resources what they are getting, and that is the thing. Then second thing is that when we talk about the content creating companies and all that, or resources, they are not that much touching the subjects. The international agencies like UNICEF, UNFPA, WHO, they are creating, but then again it becomes quite difficult for the people to reach. Most of the time, my experience is that I have a countrywide pan India students, and I have seen that many of them are not aware about the different sites from where they can get such kind of message to spread through the social media, or even for the national health portal which we are having in India, which is creating this content for digital media. Even they are not aware about this national health portal also. So first of all, we have to generate awareness among the health workers and professionals that there are the resources from where they can get the communication messages which can be shared with the youths in their particular area, so that they can educate the communities for family planning and the new the new contraceptives, or the way we are doing the things. So that is the thing I wanted to share with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. So if I could just summarize, I believe you're referring to the difficulty that health workers in India might have to create content. So they're needing to be provided with content that they can share and forward with youth. And so then the question is how to get good quality content in their hands to be able to share. And you mentioned the National Health Portal. How's that for a summary, Sanjay?
Yeah, absolutely. The requirement of a quality content is very, and especially if we want the health workers to create such kind of message, then we have to train them for the creation of the message, development of the message, or we have to motivate them to do so, because they have knowledge, they know the community nerves, and they know the actual facts in the community, what they are doing, and what are the likings of the community youths, particularly in the rural area. All these things they are very much aware. But the thing is that how to develop, what kind of messages has to be shared, construction of a messages, all these things has to be they need a training particularly for that. That is the problem which I have faced when I'm making or training them in our diploma in health education.
Right. Thank you very much, Sanjay. Corey, you've written a nice long comment, and Nishid has another comment. Corey, could you just summarize or react to the previous comments if you'd like?
So sorry. My summary was, or my summary of what I wrote is more just thinking of that question too, of the opportunities that exist. And if we're building out digital campaigns anyway, and especially in thinking about apps or whatever, just trying to find those communication points between parents and adolescents, since we know that that's a huge sticking point, is that parents have a tendency to not want their adolescents having access to this information. And so a reminder to them of, what, so some type of outreach that would be for both of them, specifically geared towards the parents, saying, this is what kids are curious about, and this is where they may go to find information, and why that might not be the healthiest way to go about it. So why this, this particular app or whatever we may be working with would be a better alternative. And then having a page that is specifically geared to the adolescents, and basically what we're already talking about, but then having another portal or page or whatever that is communication prompts between adolescents and their parents, or other way around, and that helps to, like, this is a very common discord between parents and adolescents, and so if this is what's happening between the two of you now, here's maybe a communication prompt, or a communication skill, or a discussion prompt that could help open up those avenues of conversation. And what I said in my comment is, I recognize this is very pie in the sky, and especially when resources are already an issue. And but if we're going to build it, is there a way to build it robustly enough to engage adults in a way that makes adolescents' access to this information more comfortable?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Corey. Would someone like to react to Corey's suggestions? Perhaps someone who has some experience with implementing and trying to reach both youth and their families, their parents? I'm not seeing any hands.
We are
Okay.
actually doing that for our adolescent mental health programs, which are targeted at school children with very high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression, and a very high rate of suicidal tendencies. In that program, we actually have to reach both parents and adolescents. So we do it differently, and we talk about buddy in a buddy language for the youth, and work with them on either online school sessions or offline school sessions. But with parents, we tend to bring them into a parenting workshop, for half a day or a day. In fact, we are just in the midst of planning out a very large scale program of this kind, with relation to a issue that we face in our state, which is child marriages, which is an SDG goal as well. So with relation to that, we are now working on a program which delivers a classroom session, a module, to rural schools and to children in the age group of 13 to 16, and then separately to their parents in the same classroom. So we're actually working on how to develop the content for that, and doing exactly the same kind of thing. But we're not kind of found that social media won't reach either of those groups in rural areas.
Thanks very much. So you mentioned a couple things I'd like to pull out. One was you mentioned, Nishant, that it's a mental health program. And then
the first one was a mental health program. The second one is a program on child marriages, on ending child marriages. In the state that I'm in, Maharashtra, about 22% of all marriages are child marriages.
Okay. And to what extent is that first program, the mental health program, is that using content that might be related to reproductive health or family planning?
No, it doesn't at all. It's not
Okay.
at all. It stresses are totally different areas. So not at all. I just mentioned that because she was talking about reaching parents, and Corey was talking about reaching parents and adolescents together. So
yes, yes.
that's why I mentioned that. Yeah.
And then also the relationship between services, in-person services or in-person meetings with also social media outreach or content.
Yeah, that's a tough one. We tried an experiment and that worked very well. What we did was we created a song about adolescent mental health. We wrote lyrics and we set it to a popular Hindi film song, which was sung on the occasion of the 10-day festival that is about to start in the next few days in India, leading up to the Dashera festival. So it's a community dance that Gujaratis India popularized called the Garba. So there's a Hindi film song about it. So what we did was we had a group of college students come in and we got them to write totally new lyrics, but set it to the same music. And then we had a dance instructor from the UK, who's an Indian, a very big dance instructor in the UK, come online, and we engaged young people across the country to join in and learn how to choreograph new steps for this music. They had no way of knowing that the lyrics would be about mental health. So but it was very, very popular. And for some reason, we got such a lot of calls from youth in care homes across the country that was a surprise to us.
So quite a lot of user-generated content
yes,
and entertaining content and formats.
Yes.
Very much approaching youth where they are. A couple comments coming in from Amy and from Joanna. Amy, would you like to share your comment?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was thinking that the best way to, I was agreeing with Corey, and that some of the best ways to build trust between adolescents, youth, and adults in the digital place means eventually bringing that experience offline. And different people are going to be in different young people are going to be in different places and readiness in order to sort of show up in real life. Some have the agency, desire, and empowerment to take that encounter right away, that in real life encounter right away. And some might need additional interactions to feel safe. There's a program that I know that works with cyber educators, where there's a lot of back and forth dialogue digitally, and it helps to eventually build a place of trust, and that then turns into service delivery. And other people might not be ready, young people might not be ready for that in real life experience without other add-on trust building elements, like having someone partner with them on the way. So I was just thinking, to answer to the second question there, of how opportunities to build trust in a digital space means recognizing the readiness of multiple different types of young people to get them eventually in real life at services.
Great, thank you very much. Several comments in the chat. Joanna's asking about the issue of equity in reaching youth through digital media and how trust can play a role in that. Corey appreciates the focus on mental health that Nishita has shared with us. And thanks for sharing that intervention. And then MA has, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. Would you be able to come off mute and share your comments?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Wurzberg, and I'm the Youth Health and Wellbeing Program Specialist at Peace Corps. And I put in the chat, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot lately is the need for more education on building media literacy skills, so young people can have more of a critical lens of the media they're consuming, and sort of have skills to be able to analyze, and think about who created this messages, what techniques are used, why am I consuming it in this way, how might others see it. And I've seen this being done very successfully in health education classes, but I think it's not always a part of the curriculum. And I think, young people are always, and really everyone, especially as we've seen during COVID, are going to be consuming all sorts of different messages around health. And I think building skills to be able to sort through, what is evidence-based, what's coming from a scientific lens. And I think I guess one of the things I've been thinking about is how do we make sure that we're including sort of the skill building and that critical lens. So young people have the skills to be able to look at the resources. And so it's not just ensuring that they have quality information, but making sure that they also know how to sort through what is quality and what isn't quality information.
Thanks very much, Amy. We did talk with someone from IREX, which has a Learn to Discern curriculum, focused on more on kind of governance and news, but yes, very, very relevant and certainly a foundation to this work. And Amy's agreeing. Finland has an incredible platform to address quality information. Would anyone else like to react to this topic on quality information? And yes, Laurette has mentioned most kids end up learning from porn. And yeah, that's come up certainly in our review, is that erotic content is what other platforms are competing against for informing or engaging with youth, I think particularly boys. So a couple comments on the table, if anybody would like to react.
Just one comment on what Amy mentioned. We use a very interesting experiment. There is a NGO here in Bombay, which works on online safety. So in order to get youth hooked on to understanding what is good quality, how to differentiate good quality content and poor content and poor security standards, we actually got in that NGO to do sessions on how to be online, safe online, and not get sexually exploited online. This really hooked youth. So I mean, what the NGO did was they showed them what are the standard methods of how your information gets taken up on the net, how it gives away information, how you can secure yourself. So nobody had talked to this youth before. And they loved it because they didn't get this kind of information from the parents, or because anyway in India there is a huge generation divide where it comes to digital literacy between previous generation and current generations. So this hooked them. So that was a method to get them to understand, to be more to discern more about quality of content, online.
Thanks very much. And Nishid or Loretz asked, what's the name of the NGO?
And that NGO, I will give you the name of that NGO in a second. I will put it in the message. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Beth, you've had several comments. Would you like to bring those into the audio?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, just fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was really just saying that I love the idea of the literacy skills for young people, and young people worldwide, I would say, could really use those kind of discernment skills to decide what's real, what's fake. Even adults could use that. Parents can use that. I'm echoing what's being said, and I made an earlier comment. I'm having to look back. But anyway, I think we're closing up soon, so I will stop there and let others share.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leopoldine Toussou, and I am a consultant for the Merci Monero campaign. Today, I will be speaking about the experience of this campaign and also the testing and the adapting of a pathway for providers and community leaders in Côte d'Ivoire. So in Francophone Africa, we know that the communication between generations in terms of family planning is difficult. It is difficult for youth to access contraception methods and all the services for family planning and reproductive health. So the campaign Merci Monero was created to limit the impact of social norms that prevent young people to access essential information and service and promotes communication between generations. It is a multimedia campaign, and we have testimonial videos that show the power of empathy to be able to speak about reproductive health and family planning for youth in Francophone Africa. The campaign is broadcast in 9 countries, but mainly in 4 countries of intervention in West Africa: Niger, Togo, Burkina, and Cote d'Ivoire. And we also have a strong expansion in the Democratic Republic of Congo and others. So we have this campaign that wants youth to access family planning, and they want also to promote the intergenerational communication. We use different kind of communication. We are in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we are also having activities through traditional methods like radio and TV. So we have different community activities. We have this tool. It was created to create empathy between providers and to be able to break the barriers that prevent youth to access family planning services and giving them access to the information and services for reproductive health and family planning. So the protest has been held for 3 days during 3 separate sessions in the district of Port-Bouët-Vidi. It involved a sample of 30 people, 15 claimants, and 15 youth. And now I'm going to speak about some results. So we have seen that the majority of participants said that the tool was effective in creating empathy. And this for 2 major reasons. First, the tool allows each participant to express themselves freely and with confidence. On the other hand, the tool makes it possible to better understand the concerns of young people concerning reproductive health. So here you can see this is one of the comments from the providers, and he says, often we think we are doing well. Outside, we are in pain without knowing. So we can see that we are creating awareness, and this is the beginning of a behavior change. And we know that we will be able to have an improvement of the quality of the service received. And now let's speak about the adaptation of the Empathway tool now. If the tool Empathway was only useful for providers, it would be nice, but it wouldn't be at its full potential. So that's why we decided that Empathway could be used for the whole community. And this was one of the outcomes we had from the test we did with the providers. So what changed with this tool? First, the target. So now we're not only having as a target the providers, we also are having other people like parents, teachers, associations, leaders, etc. Also, the number of rounds has changed. It's a tool, but it is also a card game. So the first game we had only 3 rounds. The first round allowed participants to break the ice. Then we could share to make sure that we understand the perception of these participants, and then they could connect. So we had different scenarios, different cases where the participants would be able to understand better the needs of youth on family planning. And at the end of this third round, we had questions to make sure that we understood the whole game and to make sure that they were engaged. So we actually took into account all the recommendations we had with the providers, and now the provider said that the cards had too many information, so we did something else. So we had done kind of a summary of all the experiences the providers have with youth, so that at the end we can engage all the adults that are accompanying these young people, so that they are sure that young people can access the adequate information and all the resources for family planning. So we changed our target, we changed the number of rounds. Now we have 4 rounds, but also the topics. So at the beginning we had different providers, young people, etc. And now we have about 15 different topics related to different topics that we take from social listening, for example, from our Facebook page. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my thought here, but we are having different discussions, different community discussions, and we are using the testimonial videos we have. So the topics are related to the adoption of contraceptive methods and the use of reproductive health and family planning services. So also the estimated duration of the game changed from of the duration of 35 to 60 minutes. So the goal of this activity is to create empathy, and so we do it through activities. So if the activity is too long, then the participants will be distracted and they won't be able to create this empathy. So that's why we changed the duration of the game, and also the number of cards for this game. It varies from 9 to 12 cards, and it depends on the chosen theme that has been chosen by the moderator. So what have we done concretely? We have organized a community discussion in Cote d'Ivoire. So in Cote d'Ivoire, we work in 5 zones: Port Boudet West, Abodobo West, Woudupong West, Songon, Bouaké North South et Daloa. Et nous avons eu des activités avec les parents et les jeunes, avec les associations, des femmes aussi. And then with the different organizations too. And we worked with these organizations to work with the Empathway tool, but we also work with them in the case of identification of these topics. So we identified problems in the community, and that's how we used the topics. So for example, if the organization said that in the community the issue was unwanted pregnancies or maybe pregnancies of young girls, then that's where we would choose this topic. So we would speak about the consequences for this young girl and this young boy. So these different interactions allowed people to share their perspective and speak about family planning, and that created the empathy. So here you can see some of the engagements we had with the allies. So at the end of the activities, we are asking all the adults and the allies to take some engagements in the community. So I'll read some of them. Before today's discussion, I was a very harsh person to the point that I distanced myself from a group of young people because of their actions. But after today's discussion, I realized that I need to continue to raise awareness among them. So I pledged to reconnect with them and I want to be their hero. And this is what the activity gave. So we want the whole community to support the providers so that we have more heroes, so that young people can have access to services like family planning and reproductive health. I want to finish my presentation here. And she says that this is the first time, it is the first time I've talked about reproductive health with an adult. I never did it with my parents. This discussion allowed me to free myself, ask all my questions, and understand a lot of things. I can now talk about reproductive health with my parents and friends. And this is our main goal. We want that the adult will understand the perspective of young people, and young people will be able to have confidence to be able to speak about these topics with adults, especially related to family planning and reproductive health, so that she can, not like the young people, can have the adequate information. Thank you. Yes, if anyone has questions. Thank you very much, Leopoldina. I am so sorry. I didn't know how to raise my hand. But thank you very much for these, for sharing with us. It is really enriching. So I have two questions. First is for our lesson learned for people who want to do the same activity. What are the tips that you can give us? And then, what is your main challenge when you want to execute this activity? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm very sorry I did not introduce myself. I work for USAID in uh, West Africa in Togo. Thank you. Okay. Should I answer right now or should I take one or two more questions? Okay, I'll answer just in the meantime. So for our lessons learned, it would be the fact of having the community involved. For us to have impact, thanks to our discussion, we need everyone to be involved. We want the community to be involved. We know that this will be easier for the discussion. And concerning our challenges, the barriers, social norms that are hindering the communication to be done, communication on family planning and reproductive health. So at the beginning, for example, there were some young people that didn't want to see it with adults. Women didn't want to see it with men. So we try to put them in the community, and we try to make them understand that we are here as a village and that we are working all together so that we can all try to bring solutions for the community. So that's why we are trying to reach everyone. So we're trying to do that. So I would say the main challenges are social norms, and also it depends on where we are. For example, we had an activity in a mosque in Guaki, and at the beginning we could see all the chairs, and we could see women on one side and men on the other side. And so the first step was to try to break these norms so that we can all sit together and be able to discuss. Because if we wouldn't, if we weren't able to do that, we wouldn't be able to start creating this empathy. Thank you. I hope I answered your question. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Moria Kuta, and I want to thank you, Ms. Tusu, for your presentation. I have two more questions. So you spoke about the tool and pathway, and one of the part that has questions to break the ice for youth. So can we have some of the questions, like an example of those? What could help break the ice, especially during these communication between generations? So relating, of course, of all the family planning topics. Also, I heard that you had activities in Benin. I just wanted to know what kind of activities do you execute in Benin, and how can we access your center, or how can we contact someone on your team? Thank you. Thank you very much. Miss Merve. So, what are the questions for breaking the ice? For example, our first question is, where did you grow up and what did you do? So someone will say, oh, I grew up in Voodoo. So while we are speaking, I will realize there are other people that did the same or grew in the same place. So everyone starts kind of breaking the ice. For your second question, we had is, what do you want to do in 2 years? So basically, we're trying to start engaging people, and we are trying to say, okay, let's speak with respect. So while they're talking, while they are speaking, we won't be saying, why? No, 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 we're not doing that. We're trying to just listen the other people, and we're trying to listen to them as a human being. So we're trying to have this activity, and that this activity would be something relaxing and that we can have the outcomes we want. So for our campaign, Merci Monero in Benin, the campaign we have in Benin is virtual. We don't have any activities in Benin in the field right now. Thank you very much. Other questions? I think there is a translation in English. Is there someone, I think, in the chat that is asking for the English translation? Are there any other questions? If not, I would like to speak or discuss about the question. How can we help youth to access information on reproductive health? If you have questions, you can interrupt me. So first, we need to help them identify their own needs, because even on their needs, taboos prevent them to identify their own needs. So we had a scenario in one of the cards of in Pathway, and we have a young person, Seth. He's 17, and he decided to have sex for the first time. And Seth is speaking with his brother, or not look. He's speaking with an adult, and he listens to Seth, and then he will speak with Seth's parents and tell them what he said, and then the parents will confront Seth without giving him the information. So we actually don't know how Seth feels, and etc. So we understand after years that the adults are thinking that Seth is not even old enough to be thinking about sex. So we don't we are actually preventing Seth to access information on reproductive health, because the parents are saying, oh, at his age he shouldn't be thinking about that, so he shouldn't be given any information because he's not ready. And it will be very difficult for him to grow up in this context and know about reproductive health. So that's what we are doing with our campaign Merci Monero. We are trying to make people understand and youth to understand and identify their needs. And once we do that, we are giving them the adequate information, the information that they can access through the Merci Monero campaign. We have some live videos there, and then we can also give the impacts of a pathway. So we're trying to give them all the information needed so that they know all the services that are available for them, so that they can have all these services for youth people and they can access these reproductive health services in their own privacy. And then they can go to a provider that will give them the adequate information. So for providers, we need to make sure that when the young people come and they can have access to this information and they're not kind of not accepted. So at the end of this tool, when they go into these provider centers, they need to make them feel comfortable. They can give them access to the services. And when they go to the hospital, they can have access to the services so that they can have access to all the services they need. W- When I was young, I used a provider for contraceptive methods, and she was a role model because I was able to speak with her, and I could have all the access to reproductive health. I have two people. I saw two questions. So please go ahead. Please go ahead. Okay, thank you very much, Tosu, Miss Tosu. My concern is on how do you have this campaign, virtual campaign in Benin? How can we participate as a young person, but also participate as a consultant, for example, or specialist? How how do we need to do it? How can we join your team? So I think the campaign is available on Twitter and Instagram, so you can follow us. If you have an organization or something, we would be very happy if you could use all the resources from the campaign. We have many people, so testimonials from young people, from allies. They speak about their experiences and their concerns about reproductive health. So we would be very happy if you could use all the tools from the campaign and that the campaign can have more impact in Benin. But as said already, our campaign is only digital so far in Benin. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Ramesh Omar, you have a question. Are there any other questions? Leopoldine, may I ask my question in the meantime? Yes, of course. So thank you very much for your presentation. I think that it was a great presentation. I do have a question. So during the pre-test phase, have you tested between parents and children that live in the same household? Do you think that this campaign is considering this? Will families use it? Because I think that the tool is great, but I think that the dynamics between direct family members, between parents and children, are different. If you test one parent with another uh, person, so not their children, and it's different. The dynamics are different. So I don't know if you have been able to see these or been able to check this kind of topic. Yes, I think that during the pre-test, so we did a pre-test with the providers. So we had a provider and a young person, and that's what we did. And that's what we did with the pre-test. But then we did have a discussion, a community discussion where they had one parent and one of his child, but they didn't have the conversation together because it would be difficult to break the ice. So there is a question in the tools of pathways, and the question is, what would be the ideal relationship you would like to have with your father? And the young girl said, I would like to be able to speak with my father, have a closer relationship with my father, but unfortunately his her father is not available. And we were able to see that through her facial expression. But we are also trying to avoid at the end of the discussions to make the parents feel that we are accusing them. We don't want them to feel accused. So we want that the young people can understand parents, and then parents can understand young people. So what we did is we gave them an advice, and the advice was, if your work is preventing you to have more time with your children, then try to find quality moments with your children, maybe while watching TV. And we can see that through our campaign, Merci Mon Héros. It can be that you can have some quality moments when you go to the market, when you watch TV, when you're making dinner. So that's when you can have a discussion with your children. So we don't want to be accusing the parents. We don't want them to feel that we are accusing them and then we create gaps. So they already come with their doubts, so we don't want them to feel bad. So thank you very much for your question. Mr. How do we do if we want to join your reproductive health activities here in Congo? Mr. Patrick Congo, we have a consultant in Congo, and I think that we can share with you her contact information so that you can see what are the activities in Congo. We have a great consultant there. And please, how long do we have? We still have 7 minutes. Okay. So I want to answer the last question. So we know that the providers are not. Sorry, so we know the providers are needed, but they're not sufficient. How can we make sure that what young people are looking for in reproductive services is there? So we need the whole community. Providers by themselves, it's not possible. So we need something from the state. We need a framework from the state so that the young people can have access to reproductive health. For example, in Cote d'Ivoire, we don't have a law on reproductive health. So when we are discussing access of adolescents for like from 15 onwards, it depends on the provider. But if we had a law, if we had a framework, kind of a law that will promote the access of young people to the information to access these services, reproductive services, it would be very good. So we need to create also these centers for young people, because right now, for example, we have some centers for schools and universities, but we don't have enough of them, and we can see that young people are uh, received with their whole community. So sometimes they are ashamed, and because they are ashamed, they won't really have all the access they need. So we should be able to have a better schedule, for example, for the centers to be open between noon and 2 p.m. So work with the whole community, work with um, the providers so that young people can feel comfortable, they can feel confident to go there, and we can have maybe a quality service. And also at the community level, we need to be engaged. We need to make sure that we are involved in different actions in, for example, civil society, parents. have to engage everyone so that family planning is a topic for everyone and that everyone is involved in this topic and that we are all heroes in our communities. Are there any other questions? Bonjour Léo, j'ai une question. Ce programme se concentre sur le fait de créer une relation entre les jeunes et les prestataires, mais je voulais savoir, dans quelques cultures, il y a aussi un besoin d'avoir l'acceptation des parents. Donc, comment vous faites pour créer cette relation avec les parents, pour que les parents donc acceptent les besoins de leurs enfants et qui est en charge d'adresser ce thème? Thank you, Kendra. It is all the goal of this Empathway tool to create this relationship, and that's why we adapted it for the whole community. So when you play this game in the community, you can see, and I will read again some of the topics. We can hear that even the parents are starting to speak about reproductive health to their child, and sometimes they don't speak about it because they are denying access for their children. They don't feel it's a right they have. So when they start playing this game, they can understand that the young people have these rights, and when he was young, he remembers that he had the same needs and he couldn't have access to the information he needed concerning reproductive health, and they know what are the consequences it had. So the Empathway tool allow them to also go back to their youth and remember their needs. And when they advise their children, they advise understanding them. And I will read one of the quotes I have. I am committed to continuing to raise awareness with my children. I don't have the right to let my children down because that's my role as a parent. So I am committed to continuing the talk with my children. And this is one of the engagement of one of the parents that is already speaking about reproductive health with their children. There is another one. I am committed to continue to raise awareness among young people. If I can't do it, I will contact their parent so that we can communicate with the young people together. And here is the synergy of actions I was speaking about. We need that everyone can engage in this family planning topic. We need that young people can have access to the adequate information, and they need to be able to be heroes for the young people. So we need that everywhere, in TV, everywhere, in all the communication channels, we could speak about free family planning and reproductive health services. We need to do broadcasting radios. We need to access people who are, for example, in the rural side, remote sites. We need to do it through Merci Monero campaign. We need to do it through our Empathway tool. We need to do it through all the channels and all the people that are working in different communities, in associations. So we need to have all the synergy of actions. And that is how we are going to give access to youth to reproductive and family planning health. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Again, this is Tom El Okalawon from Liberia. On the Breakthrough Action Project, I am representing the RMNCH plus N lead. So we're going to be walking through our youth activity when it relates to family planning and how the project have helped participants or beneficiaries to gain access and develop trust in their service provider. So let's begin with the overview of the project. As you all may know, Bridging Action is a USAID flagship integrated social and behavior change project. And the project timeline ran from 2020 April to will run from 2020 April to 2022 April. Our intervention areas, we are intervening into malaria, MMTH, FP, adolescent health, nutrition, global health security, and gender. And the partners you see below are those that we are working with in Liberia here. So the overview for our youth activity, it all started with a co-design workshop because whatever we got as a global document or as a project document, we try to contextualize it. So we had a co-design workshop with our beneficiary, few members of the youth from across 4 counties, and they met in Bon County, somewhere called Banga. Were able to sit and come up with ideas because we actually needed the ideas from the young people to see how we design an activity that could help to mitigate some of the issues that have been existing in Liberia when it comes to adolescent health. So there we were able to identify barriers and influencers that have impaired the success of family planning among young people. So some of the issues that came up was fear of being denied. That is a issue that cut across all the counties in Liberia. So young people are constantly kind of denied because when you appear to the facility and you say you want a family planning commodity, looking at your age, the service provider is kind of surprised why will a young child that age be involved into active sex. So that have kept young people away from the facility and has led them to get pregnant without planning the pregnancy or without having access to family planning commodity that will help them reduce their teenage pregnancy situation. We're also looking at the misconceptions and the myth, and they also spoke about limited knowledge when it comes to family planning. They talk about parental pressure, peer pressure, and then cultural practices that also led to them not accessing family planning commodity. So how did we begin our intervention? From what we discussed during the co-design workshop, we're able to come up with interventions that would work. So one of those interventions was the Adolescent Health Club. It's a club that is providing a safe space for young people to gather to discuss freely without any fear situations that are hampering their lives when it comes to reproductive health. So that space was developed, youth were recruited, and supervisors were recruited. So they meet on a weekly basis and they listen to this Let's Talk About Sex episodes that we adapted from a campaign that was done here by one organization called Population Services International. So they got several different issues, several different episodes of those messages that they meet weekly to discuss, ask questions freely, and the supervisor who could be a community health assistant, community health volunteer, a nurse, a midwife, a traditionally trained midwife could provide answers, factual answers, because of the level of myths in the community. We wanted for somebody who had hands-on information to provide the necessary information that will erase their mindset. So they meet on a weekly basis. And then to have the information going out to the larger population, we're able to come up with other interventions that started with community awareness, radio programs, the social media component where we gather stories from young people that we put on social media and the radio that will inspire other young people to take actions. And who were we working with, or who are we working with? We are working across all of the health structures, beginning with the community health assistant structure, which is a government structures that have been set in place to work with communities. So we're working with the community health assistants, community health volunteers, community health services supervisors, midwives, nurses, trained traditional midwives. We also have youth mentors that we work with. So the youth mentors have hands-on information and they go around, they lead campaign messages, they lead awareness and all of that across the counties. And then we have peer educators in schools. So we have peer educators. Some of the peer educators came out of the youth group that we established. So if we have an innovative young person in the group who is willing to go out and share the messages, to pick them up as peer educators, and they work in schools to talk to other young people about family planning, and then they are able to encourage other people to have access to the commodity. So after doing all of this, how has this helped to expand access to youth family planning and establish trust? So with the increased family planning messages that we have on all of the different medias have helped to increase the young people knowledge and reduce their fears from myths. Because for an example, a young person will say, if you take family planning commodity, you could become infertile. Through all your life, you may not be able to have children. And in our society, having children is like a blessing. Everybody wants to have a child. So if you think you're going to be having a family plan, if you're going to be taking family planning commodity that you're not too sure of what the effect will be, and you are thinking that you might not have a child, you will not be able to take that commodity. So erasing that fear have brought about increased knowledge and provided them that opportunity to be able to choose which commodity will be best for them to take. And also working with the health system, because one thing that came out during that co-design workshop was the collaboration or that connect. There was a complete disconnect between the service providers and the youth. So bringing them together on board have helped to erase that fear of being denied the commodity in case they want to access it. And then parents now have information that have helped them, because traditionally they want to have grandchildren earlier. They want their young children to have grandchildren. So talking with them, providing them the information that will help their young people to grow up, go to school, and achieve their potential have helped them now to reduce that pressure on the young people and helping the young people now to go freely to access the commodity as they desire. So that has been some of what we've been doing in the country when it comes to our family planning activity and the access and the trust establishment between providers and the youth. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Lon. Are there any questions from the participants about the information that Thon's shared with us? No questions. I could ask a question. So I see, Thon, and thank you for this presentation, and I'm excited about this approach. How, in what way have you been able to measure or confirm that that there is this increased knowledge and reduced fears, that there is this increase in trust that is occurring already? How have you been able to measure that? Is it through observation or other means?
Okay, so we've been working with our county health system, and in the county health system, we have this section that usually work with community to collect data. So data coming from the counties and the districts have been informing us of the number of youth that are currently turning out for their family planning commodity. That's one way we've been able to have information on that. Another way we've been able to have information on that is the success story that we are gathering from young people in the community. So our knowledge management person have been able to reach out to our community dwellers to get information from them on how they think they have an impact on their kids. And in other communities where we have obstacles in even breaking through, like for an example, we work in a community that is a Muslim community. And that community has been like they have actually rejected the issue of family planning. So when we got there, the county advised us that this would not work in this community because the tradition would not permit. Even our staff there cannot have people to turn up unless they do it in secret. But then we went there, when we talked to the community dwellers, when we had engagement meetings, entry meetings, inception meetings, they were able to understand why. And so they embraced the idea. When we established a club, we established it for 15 young people. But now we have a club that has more than 35 membership. And the young people from that community have told us now that their parents are now accepting them to access the commodity. And the people who work in the family planning facilities have also told us that the young people are now turning out and their parents are now even attending some of the meetings to understand why the young people are gathering there on a weekly basis. So the information is coming from all angles.
Great, thank you. Gunther, I see you've unmuted. Did you have a question as well?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, I'm getting you.
Oh, great. I'm Gunther Heydrich, a communication for development consultant, actually working with UNICEF in Cambodia. I really think for me, it's an important lesson from this presentation. If you want to really create people who are promoting change, you started within a kind of trusted space where young people come together within their youth organizations. It's a trusted space. They can exchange on everything that they need to know. They can create their capacity. They can strengthen their self-efficacy in this for a certain period of time. When they are kind of mature in these secured and trusted organizations, then they may be able to get out of it and to become these promoters within the broader community and becoming these proactive change agents. I think that's what I understood from your approach, and I congratulate this. I think it's a very, very good thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think that this is wonderful that the parents are now also beginning to interact with the adolescent health discussion groups. I think that there are a lot of great opportunities because so many parents, even if they want to talk to their children about these topics, what we found in our programs also is that sometimes they just don't know what to say, they don't know how to start, and they wish that there was somebody there to help them have these conversations. And so to be able to have this forum where parents can ask questions of healthcare providers can be resources who might be more accustomed to, responding to some of the questions that young people might have about reproductive health, about family planning, and also give the parents the opportunity to learn, because in many cases, at least our experience in many of our West Africa Breakthrough Action programs has been that parents, and in many cases, they didn't have someone there to have these conversations with them when they were growing up. And they don't have a model to replicate with their own children now. And so now to have this opportunity to overcome some of these barriers, to have these open discussions, that's really wonderful and interesting. I'm curious to hear also if you have had negative reactions within the groups and what kind of preparation goes into addressing negative remarks. For example, if a parent does come and they might still be resistant to the idea of a young person having access to family planning services, how is that handled? Are the providers prepared to address these kinds of remarks ahead of time? How is that handled?
So what we've been doing is that the supervisor for our clubs are also residents of the same communities where the young people are. So part of what they do is to reach out to parents who may try to resist it. So because, if it is coming from a child, and with our African tradition, the parents might feel this child is too young to tell me what I already know. So once a child has any issue of such nature, they're going to reach out to the supervisor and inform them the supervisor has a responsibility to reach out to their parents, not to coerce them, but to sit on a table to discuss and give them information on some of the things that they have concern over. So that way, with the relationship working back and forth, they get to have that parents on board what we are doing. So sometimes a parent may be resistant to say, no, I don't want my child to be part of what you're doing, or I don't want my child to get on family planning. So that child is just going to reach out to the supervisor, and the supervisor now has a responsibility to convince that parents to a point that they can be able to. And that has happened for some time. And now, just some part of last week, a kid from one of the counties just informed us now that she's having an open communication with her father and telling him about some of the negative impacts of not getting involved with family planning and some of the positive impacts of getting on a family planning commodity as a young person. And the father is now getting to understand and appreciate it. But it's just the level of work that that supervisor will have to put into it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And if I heard right, that was a father who was involved, and that was actually one of my other questions is, do you see the discussion groups as increasing access and to both young women and young men, or is it primarily young women who are involved in the group from the adolescent side?
So what we did was we established a group into two different sections. So one of it is purely women and the other one is purely boys. So we did not mix the group. So we have the boys component and the girls component so that people will discuss openly, because you wouldn't know whether a girl from that community is having a relationship with a boy and the both of them being in one group may not be able to discuss freely. So we have the boys group and the girls group. We are involving all sides of the coins. We are involving parents, both mothers and fathers, and we are involving the young people, both girls and boys. But we are prioritizing more girls group because they are almost like the victim of what we're talking about.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I certainly don't want to be the only one posing questions. Catherine, Diana, who else do we have? Olivia, Riley, any other questions? Or any other experiences to share from your work on increasing access to family planning and reproductive health services for adolescents?
Sure. I had one question. I was curious about the peer education groups, and if you could speak a little bit more to, some of the activities they engaged in and the results that you saw from that piece.
So for our peer education group, we selected schools within a district that we are working with. Most of the schools we're working with are government schools. So in those schools, we selected young people who serve as peer educators. Then we provided some level of training for them. We're also able to provide some discussion guides. So the discussion guide, let's talk about sex episodes that we have. We were able to develop discussion guides for all of those episodes. And those same guides that we are using in the health clubs are also used as a discussion guide for our peer educators in school. So we work with the school authorities. They provided us a time and during the week that we can meet the young people, the peer educator can meet their peers to discuss based on the topics for that week. So they meet and discuss, and then they allow time for the young people to ask questions and they answer their questions. And we also provide some print materials in the form of brochures. Some of those brochures talk about the different family planning commodities and its effectiveness. So we divide the brochures on the students and provide them the opportunity to read it and then can visit the health facility and make a choice on what commodity they feel will best suit them.
Thank you.
Anton, can you remind me how long these discussion groups have been active already?
So the discussion group have been active. This is the 5th month.
Mm-hmm. And have you made any course changes or any shifts?
Yes, we made some shifts because at first we did prepare 10 discussion guides. So coming to the close of the 10th week, we made additional guides, and those guides were not part of the let's talk about sex episodes, but they were extra guides that talked about some extra issues like social issues, menstrual issues, and other things, nutritional issues, malaria issues that could all be discussed because, health it cut across, though we're talking about family planning, but there are some other information that we felt the young people could also need. So we added extra materials to what they already had. And they have been discussing that. Part of what have also worked for us well is that the young people are now able, they are having this facilitation skill. Because at a certain point, we decided to see if the supervisors who were kind of more professional could allow the young people to begin facilitating some of the sections and they guide them through that. Because we want to take these young people to work in the school as peer educators. So we already have some, but we're trying to see at the close of this entire process, we want to select some of the young people that will work in other schools. So they are now beginning to facilitate some of the sections, and reports coming from the county is telling us that yes, their facilitation skills is being built, and then most of them are now able to discuss openly among their peers, and based on that, other young people are taking advantage and also opting to facilitate some of these sections.
Very interesting. Thank you. Looks like we still have about 13 minutes, and I know that Thon, you'll be asked to give an overview of this discussion in the plenary, just a couple of minutes long overview. Are there any other next steps for the adolescent health discussion groups that you're planning over the course of the coming year?
Yes, there are other next steps. So currently, we are working on a transition plan because we don't want to close the clubs and then turn our back. We want to transition the group. So we find a way to see how we can link our groups to other maybe organizations or maybe with the communities and see how the communities can take the lead to continue the activity, not only with this set of youth, but maybe with new youth that they can be able to recruit from the community. So what we're doing now, this month, we are going to be having a transition meeting with all of our community across the counties and districts. So we're going to be involving the community leadership and stakeholders to see what ideas they think we can use to transition the youth. Because part of what we did was to provide them materials that they can use. So we provided them radios, SD cards, discussion guides, and we are thinking if this set of materials can be used for new set of youth. And the community can provide some set of support for the supervisor to encourage them and motivate them to help teach their young children. So we are in the process of that transition period, and we're hoping at the end of the day, the community can take on for sustainability and continuity of the activity in their various towns. And it's also going to be establishing new youth in new districts and new communities. And then we're going to follow, maybe not necessarily completed the full trend of what we did, but we're going to sit with the Ministry of Health. We're going to be planning for maybe 2 or 3 days of where the Ministry of Health and county health authorities, we all can sit together to come up with a concept of what we think, based on lessons learned from what we are doing, we can use to scale up our activity in other communities and districts.
Very interesting. And so is that just for the discussion groups, or also, I believe earlier in your presentation, you mentioned social media there were also social media components.
Yes, so we are not creating anything new. We are using the exact same approach, but maybe with new ideas that we can incorporate into what we already have. So we're still going to be continuing with our community engagement activity because to create the demand for service, we have to use all of the different mediums. Because if you rely on just the club or the youth group, you're not going to get that message going up to the wider population. So we're still going to be using all of the different approaches to be able to reach out to the last mile and have young people making the best choice to plan their family. So, but we want to sit with the Ministry of Health, the Family Health Division, and other stakeholders to look at some of what they have, how we can incorporate it into what we are doing to ensure to get the best results.
Wonderful, thank you. It looks like we still have about 10 minutes, and I was thinking because we are a smaller group, to just go around the virtual table and just introduce ourselves and what we're working on and perhaps what drew you to this group in particular. I've already introduced myself at the top of the webinar, so I'll cede the line to somebody else. I believe we know Thon as well. Olivia, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Carlson. I'm a program officer working at CCP on Breakthrough Action with Aaron and Ton. I was asked to join to help take notes, but I am really interested in this topic and understanding more about how we can be supportive of young people and create an enabling environment for them to ask questions, learn about their bodies, and make informed decisions about family planning. So thrilled to be here, and it was great, Ton, to learn a little bit more about the work that your team is doing in Liberia. Maybe I'll pass it to Catherine.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi all. My name is Catherine Ponce. I actually work in philanthropy and don't have tons of work in what we're talking about today. I'm actually really just here to support the staff. And it's really nice learning a lot since that's something I work within every day.
Thank you.
I can pass it over to Riley.
Hi, thanks so much, Don, for your presentation. I'm actually a master's student at Hopkins in the same department that CCP is based in, so health, behavior, and society. And I'm just here to learn more about the work that Don is doing in Liberia and how we can support youth around family planning and those health choices. Maybe I'll pass it back to Gunther.
Okay, thank you. I think I already introduced myself. So I'm a consultant on communication for development, and I'm always concerned about how it is possible to change behaviors and social norms. And I was particularly intrigued by the concept of supervisors in this presentation. I was asking myself, knowing adolescents and youth, and then looking at supervisors. Do they like supervisors? What is the relationship among them and supervisors? And what is the profile of supervisors that are able to support them in their dynamics and not to kind of being perceived as, once again, adults are manipulating them in the way they want them to be. So there must be a special training or special preparation of these adolescent appropriate supervisors or companions to help them and to move forward positively. So how do you do that these supervisors are acting appropriately and that they are socially accepted by adolescents? That is my main concern. Thank you very much.
Okay, so just to provide for our supervisor, the entire design of that activity came from the youth. So when we
Yeah.
talked about, when they talk about establishing a club that could have them have that space to discuss, we were talking about, so who's going to lead this activity in a club? So they were like, in a community, we have our sport actors. There are people trust. For an example, they do trust the community health assistants. The community health assistant, they told us they consider them as their small doctors. These community health assistants were trained by the Ministry of Health, and they are also in the community providing services. So they provide family planning commodities.
So
We give it to them.
Connection is quite poor. I can't get anything.
So are you getting me now? Hello?
Yes, I got you. Yeah.
Okay, so like I was saying, the youth were the ones who told us that there are people in the community that they do trust. So they trust their community health assistants, which they consider as their community health doctors, because those community health assistants also get drugs from the Ministry of Health that they do administer in the community, like family planning commodities. They do give it out to people who are interested. So, and they usually will hire themselves to go to the community health assistant for their commodities if they need it. So they told us that they trusted them. So people that they told us they trusted to work with them are people that the community selected, because the selection was based on criteria. So it was the community that selected them. And then they got training from Breakthrough Action and the Ministry of Health. So they were trained, and the issue of biases and all of that, we spoke on it, and they were able to grab the idea. And then part of what they told us was if they are working.
We lost connection.
Yeah, Don, we've lost you again. Maybe while we wait, I think we haven't yet met virtually Diana, who's also on the line.
Hi, everyone. Diana. Thank you, Don, for a very informative presentation. I just recently finished my graduate studies, and this is a topic that I was very much interested in. And I was also interested in learning about the different roles played by practitioners, midwives, and the community as a whole. And when discussing youth family planning, I'm always very much interested in the cultural aspect and the cultural norms and what is expected and how that plays a role in access.
Hello, are you getting me now? I hope I'm clear.
And thank you, Diana, for that introduction. Yes, Don, now there's a little bit of feedback on your microphone, but the connection itself seems better.
So for the cultural norm, we try to see how we meet parents exclusively to talk to them. That's part of our strategy, or youth exclusively. So we don't bring parents and the children together to discuss the family planning issue, except maybe where we are having a meeting and somebody's stand to listen. Well, if it is parents, it's going to be all parents, where parents will be able to tell our people in the community the real issue, what they think, what are their fears, traditionally what they feel, and then the person who will be leading that session will be able to provide them information that they can use. So culturally, we try to meet, we try to maintain a group in a way that if it's only going to be, it's going to be useful for the youth, so that people will have that opportunity. And then looking at the cultural side, we also tell them family planning is not going to deny your kids from having children. It's not going to deny them of the number of children they want to have. All we try to do is how we can work with you all to help these young people to make the right decision because today, when our lives are improved, it's also going to be passed on to you. And then they tell you in some of those meetings, if you sit, maybe one day you're going to have an opportunity to come and listen to some of the parents. They will tell you, even us as parents, sometimes we talk to them. We try to see how we can advise them. But on the other side, they too have their own issue. They too want to explore. They want to learn new things. They want to have relationships. So it has been like that. At some point, the parents want grandchildren. At some point, they try to advise them, and then all of that. Sometimes they feel afraid to talk to them about family planning because they feel as they discuss it, then they are allowing them now to go and have access to it. And if they will have access to it, it means they're going to start having sex. If they will have sex, then now they're going to be knowledgeable to things that they don't want them to be knowledgeable. So the discussion can sometimes be interactive, then information can be passed on based on a group and the level of what they will come out, and then they can be able to take decision to make the right choice.
Great. Thank you, Thon. We have about, oops, looks like we should be heading back to the plenary. Yeah, so go ahead and click leave breakout room. You should have had something pop up on your screen, and that should put us back to plenary. Thanks. So as just mentioned, we'd like to take this opportunity, take a little bit of time to report out on what was discussed in each of the sessions. So I'll go around the table and invite each facilitator to give about a 2 or 3 minute overview of the more interesting points or the more robust discussion questions that you exchanged about. So perhaps first we can hear from Catherine Harbour and the Digital Youth Family Planning Review, and then from Leopoldine on M-Pathways, and finally from Thon. Catherine?
Okay, thank you. Well, we had a terrific discussion, a lot of great inputs. Some of the points that we touched on was what sort of some of the program experiences, particularly from the Center for Social and Behavior Change Communication, Mumbai in India, about experiences of developing content and trying to find content that would resonate. A particularly successful example that was shared was a film, Komal, 6 minutes animated, that was shared widely and got a lot of attention and reach. We also discussed how just being committed to a single site or trying to chase kind of likes is not the best approach. Rather, the content, generating content that's going to be appealing is helpful. And also budgeting appropriately so that those kind of so that sites or content can be maintained, not just developed, but also maintained. One of the participants shared some experiences working with health workers in India, that they're forwarding. They don't create messages, but they do have so much contact with the intended audience. Is a very valuable resource for learning about them, and the importance of creating good content and making it available to the National Health Portal. We talked about building campaigns or building outreach that is meant to appeal to youth and also to their parents and their families, as well as providers, and encouraging parents and families and youth to talk together. We also had a final comment on that about if parents knew that their children were getting information from porn, they would probably be more motivated to engage with the content. We talked about building trust and building education on media skills and what sort of outreach might be available or appropriate to do to help youth discern what's good information, what's correct, trustworthy, and also how to be safe online. So thanks very much to all of the participants in our discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was a great overview. And I think, yeah, those considerations and the culture that exists in the virtual and digital space sometimes reflects, but sometimes is quite different from what we see at the community level and in real life, which perhaps is a nice segue over to Leopoldine, who gave an overview of a community-based and discussion-based guide called In Pathways, which aims to facilitate discussion and conversation between providers and young people to increase empathy among providers for young people's experiences concerning reproductive health and family planning, and also the use of a similar discussion guide between young people and community members. So over to you, Leopoldine.
Indeed, we spoke about the pretest and the adaptation of pathway. So we wanted to create empathy of adults for young people so that young people can also have access to family planning services and reproductive health services. So in our group, we spoke about how can we make sure that youth can access information about reproductive health. So we spoke about young people and them not having, not knowing their needs on reproductive health. So the first step is to identify its needs. So we had a case where, for example, a parent in one of the intervention that said, oh, this person can't have or ask this question about family planning, but it was one of the needs. He needed to have this information. He had the right to have access to family planning and reproductive health. We spoke about our campaign, Merci Mon Héros. We also spoke about having a synergy of actions between institutional organizations, providers, the community, so that young people can have access to information services of family planning and reproductive health. We also spoke about the importance of creating a center where young people can have access to these different services, and not a center, but a law, so that we can have the law that gives them the right to have this access. And they can have also access to a center where they can go and they can have access to information, to contraceptive methods. So we have to have this center that opens during their free time. And the providers need to have also this empathy towards these young people. Also, the involvement of the community. We need the parents to be engaged. And we have a question during our discussions. For example, during our community activities, we also had people from the same family that were having the discussion, and we had one of the parents and his daughter. And one of the question was, what would you like to be your relationship to be with your father? And the girl said, I would like my father to be able to be involved in my education. I would like to have a relationship with my father. But my father, unfortunately, is always very busy. So at the end of the Empathway tool, we wouldn't like us to be accusing the parents. So at the end of this activity, at the end of the game, when we finish using this tool, we would like the parents to be able to understand the young people, but we would also like the young people to understand their parents. And we know that sometimes because of work, it could be difficult, but sometimes they can find these moments of quality with their children. It could be during the TV time or during the meals, so that they can speak about reproductive health and also about family planning. Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that thorough overview, Leopoldine. And You spoke again about these different reference groups that are so important and have such an impact on young people's lives, on whether or not their questions about reproductive health and family planning get answered. And sometimes indeed these same reference groups have their own questions and their own concerns. And it's so important to create, as you were saying, those opportunities for dialogue, those opportunities for exchange, for understanding one another's perspectives, to really open the floodgates for having, even if at a trickle at first, these conversations about these often sensitive topics, which again provides a nice bridge into Thon's activities and the discussion we had in the Liberia breakout room about the adolescent health discussion groups, which involve providers, parents, and young people as well. So Thon, over to you to give an overview of that discussion.
Thanks so much. So we're able to discuss our adolescent health activity, which is based on our Let's Talk About Sex activity. So we're able to discuss how that activity was initiated, how it has built young people understanding, young people and parents understanding about family planning commodities, how it has built relationship between the youth and the providers based on constant awareness. And then we're also able to talk about how it has expanded access to family planning, and then it has also been able to build trust. So we were also able to talk about how our supervisors are working with the young people to ensure that the right messages are given and help to erase some of the myths that are around, and how our community health assistants are also reaching out through community awareness activity to provide the right information for parents so that parents can be able to have access to information and reduce the pressure on their young children and prevent them from accessing family planning commodities. So that was some of the things that we were able to discuss in our group. That is over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And another heartfelt thanks to all of our presenters and to our participants today for contributing to those discussions. Now, slide please. I'd like to hand the, to pass the microphone over to Amy Uccello, who is at USAID's Office of Population and Reproductive Health, and is a senior youth and reproductive health technical advisor. Her technical expertise centers on adolescent sexual and reproductive health and rights, adolescent development, cross-sectoral youth programming, and meaningful adolescent and youth engagement. As a senior advisor, Ms. Uccello manages a global portfolio of youth programs offering technical guidance in these areas, as well as demand generation, service delivery, and quality of care, supported by expertise in measurement, evaluation, and research. On behalf of Breakthrough Action, thank you so much for joining us today, Amy, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Erin, and thank you to the participants. Thank you to those who were moderating each of the sessions. I only wish that I could have listened to all three at the same time, but I look forward to the notes as they come out in the future. So social behavior change is essential for family planning, reproductive health programming, and is particularly critical intervention with and for young people. We know that lifetime behaviors, both positive and negative, often originate in adolescence, where young people are formulating their identities, learning their likes and dislikes, conforming or challenging social and gender norms, all the while trying to form and maintain relationships. They're also in the midst of rapidly changing cognitive, emotional, and moral development. And this presents an incredible opportunity to guide young people towards healthy behaviors that they can take with them for a lifetime. But I don't need to convince you that behavior change initiatives are important in AYSRHR. You've already listened to this webinar. The presentations and roundtables today shared incredibly innovative ways of answering the questions posed at the start of the session on how to address persistent challenges in youth SBC programming and find ways to build trust between youth and adults. The multimedia campaign in Cote d'Ivoire aimed to increase provider empathy for young people by recognizing the divide in understanding that drives provider bias. By introducing a one-on-one relationship between youth and providers, that divide can close and trust can be built. Research told us that the digital space offers young people the anonymity and bias-free access they need to feel safe while waiting for more positive societal norms. Allowing young people to design the products and content in ways that align with their values, priorities, and experiences builds trust in these digital sources, and therein the SRH messaging that we are sharing. And the listening groups in Liberia allow young people to talk about challenging SRH topics in a safe environment and drive their peers towards trusted health resources. The unique AYS initiatives all start with the notion of building trust and prioritizing meaningful adolescent engagement as equal partners using platforms that they feel safe. Hopefully, the success of these programs can motivate trust as a core component to future youth SBC programming. I'd like to close the session with one more suggestion on how to catalyze trust by addressing the concept of second chances. SBC often requires repetition in multiple venues from multiple sources. What this repetition might inadvertently introduce to young people is that there's only one way to live, lest you be labeled bad, wrong, or broken. My hope for youth SBC is that we create a space for error, experimentation, and second chances. Mistakes are often our best teachers. And as much as we aim to mitigate the dangers posed by those mistakes, we also do not want to exclude those youth who've already lived very adult lives in the contexts in which we work. Telling youth that behavior is fluid could introduce the concept of renewable opportunities, that grit, perseverance, and adaptation are highly valued, and that their life trajectory is not fixed. There are opportunities to turn your decisions and behaviors towards greater success, and most of all, it's never too late. Creating positive norms, expectations, and perceptions of youth is an evidence-based positive youth development approach, and it's our role to create an environment that allows young people to rebound and realign and convey that our messages are not about judgment, but about hope. Only when young people feel accepted can they trust our programs and messages. I want to thank you for indulging me in this last word. I am grateful for all of the participants, the organizers, and thank you so much for joining this webinar, and keep an eye out for the materials as they come from the team going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. I love that concept of a second chance. And I think that's something that everyone can keep front of mind. And that's something that we also try and figure into our programs, especially through the Merci Mon Euro campaign, is really, if you try once as a parent, even if you have an uncomfortable conversation with your child and it doesn't go so well, it's okay. Try again, continue, and also give those same second chances and that same grace to young people in your life as well. And I love that idea. I think it's such an important concept to keep in mind, especially in this realm of programs and interventions that we're working on. Thank you so much for those closing remarks. And another round of thanks to each of our presenters today, and to all of the participants who contributed to the conversations and who joined us. Thank you so much. And we'll be sharing and you'll have a poll popping up on your screen right now. Thank you so much, Marcella. And so if you wouldn't mind describing your workplace and participating in that poll as soon as possible and before you leave the session today. Otherwise, thank you and bonne continuation. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.